Welcome to the Appalachian Heritage Woodshop, woodworking with an Appalachian flair.
Now that I've got the rocking chair here in the shop, I can take a closer look at it. The upholstery is kind of unusual the way it's attached. So I took a little peek back here in the back, and the upholstery is not original. The other thing that's rather obvious is the metal rail right here, which goes through the arm, seat, and down through the rocker. The other thing I wanted to point out is the actual rockers have a flat spot. And that I cannot figure out whether that was manufactured that way or whether that's a repair or what. So I'll find out more when I tear into this. So Jeff is wanting the finish stripped off, all of the joints tightened up, and then he's going to get it reupholstered. So the easiest thing I believe for me to do is to disassemble it as much as I can, then strip the finish, and then reassemble it, making all the joints good and tight, and then we'll get it reupholstered. But what I want to do first is to take a peek at the upholstery. So I'm going to cut off a little piece back here. Stuff is very old. Now that's interesting. They used an old piece of quilt for the padding. So this upholstery job was probably a self-done DIY many years ago. Just a quick research, this rocking chair was mass-produced, manufactured from the mid-1800s to the early 1900s. Somewhere between 1850 and say 1920, somewhere in that range. So here's what I was showing. This board right down through here with the holes in it, that is where the caning would have gone back and forth. So this originally would have had a cane back, and I'm assuming the seat would be the same way. And the seat repair is obviously a self-done repair job, and it looks like they just used some material from a crate. This says from Stalin's Nursery, Bridgman, Michigan. And of course we're in West Virginia. So off camera, I'm going to go ahead and take this apart and look at the screws and some of the hardware a little bit closer and see if I can find the manufacturer's name on it somewhere so I can pinpoint the date a little bit more accurate. So Jeff, you can see this is a very old rocking chair and it has been repaired. So let's look at it after I get it apart. Now I've got the rocking chair completely disassembled, and as you can see, it's not in the best of shape. You can tell by looking at the seat and the crest rails on the back that originally there was a cane seat and a cane back on it. And apparently those broke, and the owner decided to upholster it instead of recaning it. So let me show you a few of the items I noticed. Now, when it was reupholstered, the individual that reupholstered it, like any Appalachian homesteaders, they would use what they had. And here's some very, very old linoleum. So this was put on the bottom of the seat. And then on top of that, there was some cotton batting. And then on top of that, there was some cardboard. Now this particular piece of cardboard came out of the back, but I wanted to show you the stamps. And if you notice, it wasn't cut, it was just torn. It does have the return address on it and the mailing address, and it has 52 2-cent stamps and 1 1-cent stamp for a total of $1.05 to ship whatever was in this box from Philadelphia to Alma, West Virginia. So I looked up the stamp, and this is a 1929 2-cent George Washington stamp and a 1929 1-cent Benjamin Franklin stamp. So I know the chair was reupholstered in 1929 or very shortly thereafter. So on top of the padding, they had a handmade cushion, and you can see here where the mice chewed into it a little bit to get to some of the batting that was inside of this. But this is all hand stitched. On top of that was a very, very old piece of quilting, which has been worn out, and that's why they used it for padding in the chair. And then, of course, on top of that was the upholstered material. And this is what the upholstery looked like. Now, as I said, they had trouble with mice getting in the bottom. The mice chewed through the linoleum, through the cardboard, and got into the cotton batting. So they went to the bottom and installed a piece of screen wire. And then on top of that, they installed a piece of material from a crating. And you can see this one, this particular crate was from Brigham, Michigan. So I still have to take a little bit of time and date the hardware that came off of it. I have made templates of all the parts, and a couple of the tenons on the crest rail were broken, and they had actually taken a piece of, here it is, they took this and put this across the crest rail to hold it in place because the tenon had broken off. Here it broke off, so they took this one and put it across here and nailed it on to hold it in place, and then they used wire. And of course all that was under the upholstery. So doing a little bit of quick research, this rocking chair was mass produced between 1850 and 1930. It was reupholstered in 1929. I'm hoping that when I examine the hardware a little bit better, the screws and bolts, that I can zero in a little bit better, because I really believe this was between 1850 and the late 1800s is when it was made. So now what I've got to do is strip the finish, and then once I strip the finish, then I'm going to meet with the client again, and we'll decide on a path forward, whether I need to remake certain pieces or try to repair the existing pieces, and then of course reassemble it. So there is one other thing, and that's these the rockers. They have a flat spot on them. I have no idea why. Both of them are that way. So you can sit in the chair and it's set and not rock, and then when you lean backwards, it will rock. But it does have a very substantial flat spot. So I'll come back and show you the pieces after I strip all of this finish off and get down to the bare wood. And then we'll have a closer look at Jeff's Granny's rocking chair. Well, it's been a while since I've showed you any progress on the antique rocking chair, so I thought I'd catch you up on that. Appreciate my client Jeff's patience. I had a minor health issues and some family issues and a couple of holidays in there, so it's been several months since I've worked on this. I did manage to come down in the shop and work a few hours here and there. So I made the repairs and got it glued together, but I didn't video that. So I thought I'd take a minute and show you the final chair and some of the repairs that I've made to it. Before I do that, I want to let you know I did a little bit more research on this chair. In 1889, Sears sold his business. However, in 1893, Sears opened the Sears and Roebuck mail order business. And that's the business that everybody is familiar with. In 1895, through the Sears Roebuck mail order business, began selling rocking chair kits. And this is one of those rocking chair kits. So this was probably purchased in the late 1890s. It was assembled by the homeowner. It was designed, it came in parts, and the homeowner would assemble it using screws, bolts, a collagen type of hide glue, and brads. So it lasted until about 1929 when they repaired it and upholstered it. So the chair only lasted about 35 years, which is not very long. And that right there shows you how poorly the chair was assembled by the homeowner. Let me show you some of the repairs to it. I did a couple Dutchman, which is an old style repair. And basically when you have a defect in a wood that cannot be repaired, you cut that out and inlay another piece of wood, same species with it, and then plane that down. And that's what I did here on the arm, right here. There was a small split here which I managed to repair, but there was a piece split off here. So I had to make a cut and get another piece of hard maple and inlay that and repair that. And that looks real good. That's a nice repair there. That's called a Dutchman repair. Down here on the front of this rocker was the same situation. Here's the old rocker, as you can see. It had split off quite a bit through here, and the tenon had wallowed out quite a bit where it was worn over time. And I was afraid to repair just this little bit here. So I basically cut this all the way back to here and inlay another piece of hard maple and then made a new mortise and cleaned up the tenon. So I got a good fit there. Now, there was also a place back here on the back, right here. Again, all of these joints were nailed together with some very wee little nails. And these are not pneumatic. These were your nails, and some of them, this is a 4-penny nail with the head. And they even had some, it looks like a 7-penny nail. And then, of course, some very old screws also, as well as some of the all-threaded rod. But when they would nail it together, they actually split the wood. So here's an indication of that. You can see the nail hole here and the split right here, which is right where the mortise is. And, of course, there's a lot of stress right there. And right down here where this rung comes in, it was the same way. They nailed it in there and the wood split. On this one, the rung, the tenon split and the rung itself split back about 2 inches. I managed to get that apart and repair that without any issues. All of the rungs I could clean up and repair the tenon part of them and put those back together. And all of those joints, I used PVA glue on, which, as you know, is a modern aliphatic glue. It has very strong holding power, and on those, fit was not too bad, so I felt comfortable using a PVA glue there. However, on the rockers down here, they had wallowed out quite a bit, and it was a sloppy fit. So for that reason, I used an epoxy glue down here. Now, as you remember, there was an all-threaded rod down here which held the rocker to the arm, and the seat and everything in between was just sandwiched together. So the all-thread rod's what held it together. And Jeff said, is there any way to remove the rod? So I came up with a way, and I agree with Jeff, the rod is very hideous. It's an unsightly addition to the chair. So I removed that. So once I repaired this and repaired the tenon and put it back together, I went underneath and drilled up into it and put a screw up in there and countersunk and counterbored the screw, and then plugged the hole. So I feel very comfortable with the repairs on the front of the rockers. On the back of the rocker, again, the tenon went down into the rocker, and the previous homeowner had used a nail and nailed it together. And again, there's a lot of stress on this. From the movement, the nail just wallered out, and it ended up splitting the tenon. So I managed to repair the tenon, and then when I reassembled it, I actually used a piece of 1/8 inch metal rod, which I drilled that out and put that through, and that helps hold the tenon in there. So I feel very confident with the way the rockers are on there. Of course, since this was a kit and assembled, there was a lot of screws on it. Well, the screws had wallered out, the wood stripped out, so I had to drill those out and use a larger screw, and I went ahead and countersunk those and set those below the surface. But I left those exposed because that's the way it was originally on the arm, and that's the way the seat was held together. Now, up here, they also had a screw there, and when I made the repair, that wasn't necessary. And over here, you can see they had a screw and a nail holding it together. And the repair I made, that wasn't necessary, so I left those out. Now let me show you the parts that I had to make. The top crest rail was not in too bad a shape. One of the tenons was in very bad shape, split. So what I had to do was cut the tenon off. I had to plug the mortise and then make a new mortise and then put in what's called a floating tenon. The other side, the tenon and mortise cleaned up good and put together. So that's held together with PVA glue only. There's no screws or nails in that, and that's a good quality fit there. The middle crest rail and the lower crest rail, I had to make new parts. Now let me show you why here. This is the lower crest rail, this way. And if you notice, it's only a half a tenon. And on this side, this tenon had broken off. And the way the grain runs on it, there's a lot of stress right through there, and there's not a lot of strength right there. The previous owner, if you look real close, they put a nail here, 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 and here, trying to repair it. And the nails just compound the problem. You can see it split all the way right there. I cleaned it up as best I could, glued that back on, but they gave it some kind of a black varnish type coating, and that got into this split, and that would not allow the PVA glue to soak into the fibers, so this would not hold. So although I made a repair, when I dry fitted it together, I saw that this was not going to hold. Since I had to make the middle crest rail, I just went ahead and replaced the bottom crest rail at the same time. This is the middle crest rail, and on this side you can see the tenon is in very, very bad shape. Half of it's split off and the rest of it's in bad shape. On this side, it just plain old broke. And it was that way when I picked the chair up. Now what the previous homeowner did when they repaired it and reupholstered it, they took wire and just wired this with the tenon that broke that was still glued into the side rail, and they wired that together, and then they upholstered over it, and that was their repair, and of course that didn't hold. So I had to make a new one of these. So I wanted to show you, this was my prototype, and for those of you that are not aware, when you have a bent piece of wood like this, like the crest rail, as you can see, the tenon is angled to the shape of the crest rail. So there's a lot of handwork on this in cutting these and getting these to fit. But I did that for the middle crest rail and the lower crest rail, and I got a very, very good, tight fit, quality fit there, and those are held together with PVA glue, and there was no need for any additional nails or screws, which the previous owner had put in there when he assembled it. Now, this chair had a caned seat and a caned back. The cane was applied on the back with these little pieces on the side, and these are the original ones which came off. And I wanted to show this to you. If you notice real close, when this chair was assembled back in late 1890s, they actually used nails to assemble it. And you can see he bent over a couple of the nails. And you can see all of the splits in it, and this is from stress as well as the wood being dried out. At some point in time it was painted a green, and then when it was reupholstered and repaired in 1929, they used some type of a black paint. I really think it was like a black varnish on it. But anyway, this is just pine, and it's very, very weak. So I had to make new pieces, and as you can see, I used hard maple, put it together with screws. I used 5 screws, recessed the screws. And the main thing is, these are quite a bit deeper than these, so this will withstand a lot more stress. So I feel comfortable on that repair, and I think that'll withstand the stress from the upholsterer when they put the reeding in. Now the seat itself was put together with a double dowel at each of these joints. And when I took it apart, I thought that's not too bad. The glue failed. As I said, it was collagen-based hide glue. So I took it apart, cleaned up the dowels. You can see them here. And reassembled it. However, once I cleaned the glue off, the fibers on the dowel had been crushed, and the holes where the dowels went were wallowed out a little bit. So what I had to do was to drill them out and make some oversized dowels, and then put that together, and of course that's put together with PVA glue. So again, those are very solid, strong joints there. I feel comfortable with those. Of course, used a carriage bolt here to hold the arm together. So that's the chair after the repairs and after it was glued together. The client requested that it be stained a medium brown color. Now, the chair is maple, hard maple, and all of the old wood, of course, absorbs stain differently than the new wood. So I had to use some different staining techniques to try to get the new wood to blend in with the old. And up here on the crest rail, top crest rail, right along through here, was a lot of that old black varnish, paint, whatever it was. I cleaned it up as best I could, but it had actually absorbed into the wood fibers, so that's the reason that's collared the way it is. That's the best I could do with that. But overall, I think it looks very good. I feel very confident with the repairs that are made. It's very stout, and I'm sure this chair will last another 125 years. So what I'm going to do now is spray a clear coat, a top coat, protective coat over this. Then the client will pick it up and take it to his upholsterer, and that individual will do the caning on the seat in the back. So what I'm going to do is I'll bring you a final video of the piece after it is returned from the upholstery shop. So let's see what it looks like after it's completely done. Jeff, this chair turned out really nice. So this chair's been in your family for a while?
Yes, yes. As far as we can tell, our folks came up from Giles County, Virginia in the 1850s.
Wow.
Built a log cabin on the property that I still live on.
And you're the third generation to have that property?
I think the fourth.
Fourth? Okay.
But
Right.
they raised their kids there, and their kids grew up there. And this rocking chair was in the log cabin. My great grandmother used it.
Yes.
And as you'll recall, when we first looked at it, it was black, it was upholstered,
Yeah.
and I think you covered that in some of the other parts of the video, but you did a really, really good job with it.
The upholstery the caning turned out really nice, and this would have been the original, or real close to the original. When they upholstered it, apparently the original caning was broken, and like most people in this area, they fix it themselves with what they have.
Right.
And they used an old quilt and things like
and
that.
cardboard and
And
everything else.
so it turned out really nice.
So it was originally caned, and then
Yes.
they reupholstered it,
Yes.
and now we've returned it to its natural state where it was originally.
This is it's hard maple with, I like the color of it, nice patina, and of course right now the problem is the rockers have a flat spot.
Right. Kind of defeats the purpose of a rocker, doesn't it?
It does, it does. So you're wanting me to try to repair the rocker so that it will rock a lot smoother.
Correct.
So I'll be able to do that, and once I do that, then it will be returned to you, and hopefully you'll be able to use it in your family for another 3 generations or whatever.
Sure. It may not be quite as comfortable as a modern rocking chair, but
yeah,
it's just nice to have something that's been in the family that many years.
Yeah.
Great sentimental value.
And one of the things I've noticed is that by today's standard, this is a small rocking chair.
Yes.
But this is the standard size that they would have had back in the late 1800s. Because this was from anywhere from 1850 to the 1890s, somewhere through there.
Right. People were not quite as big back then.
No, they weren't.
You ever notice any of these old pictures of people working, especially in rural West Virginia? You never ever see anybody that's overweight.
Correct.
No. Always very, very slim. Those old timers really worked hard.
Yeah, a friend of mine used to say, you never see a fat farmer, and there's a reason for that. They had to work. And of course, back then,
Right.
they didn't have a lot of machinery. They were done with either mules or horses or oxen. And physically, that's hard to...
Yeah, no chainsaws, no tractors,
Nope.
no bulldozers.
Nope.
Yeah, everything was much more difficult back then. So that's why it's so nice to have this refurbished. You did a marvelous job on it.
Now, your ancestors built a log house there in the bottom of the property.
Correct.
And that log house has been dismantled.
Yes, I think about 2006 we dismantled it. We get way more flooding down there than the old timers did. I think because by virtue of timbering and interstates coming through.
Yeah.
A lot of old timers up there tell me that it didn't used to flood nearly as bad. So I was really afraid that the log cabin was just going to float away and float down to Charleston. So in 2006 we dismantled it. Stored it. We repurposed a lot of the wood, and I built an addition on my house. We used a lot of the old wood.
That's great.
In the house, you've seen my rec room where we used the logs in the fireplace and hearth and all that. So trying to use. I still have some of the old wood stored, but tried to utilize it because love the old wood and the old stone. Really enjoy living up there.
Well, it was a fun project working on this rocker, and I'll repair the rockers and make it to where it's more comfortable
now
to rock.
Get it to where it can actually rock. That would be good.
All right. Jeff, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for all you've done.
All right, I hope you all enjoyed watching this video as much as I did making it and working on this chair.